So there's a bit of a new rumor slash leak, and we've kind of heard this before, so I don't know how accurate it is or if it's something like that. But, maybe it's one of those things that honestly does happen. To me, if Phil Spencer retires at the end of the year, it doesn't really change Xbox's fortunes because everything is already too far along, and you have to, the leadership behind him is already trash. So that would just be promoting trash to replace the trash that just left. So it wouldn't really make much sense, to be honest with you. I mean, when you think about it, the people working there have all kind of fallen up the ladder. It's the strangest thing to me because I've never seen a business that kind of handled that way. And you have to kind of understand that Microsoft is a company that is probably only going to promote people or bring people in that are going to toe that line anyway. So Phil Spencer, his damage is already done. He came out and, the Game Pass stuff, which turned out to be the wrong move, the lack of exclusive games, which turned out to be the wrong move. There's just so many different things involved there that turned out to be the wrong move. And, then you have, we're not 100% sure on how this stuff goes, but it's like Sarah Bond. She doesn't believe in exclusive. She's not a gamer, first of all. So, it's one of those things where you have people who don't know anything about gaming or that whole atmosphere and what gamers really want and things like that, just going, okay, well, from a business perspective, any business person can come in and go, well, you guys have Windows, so why not make everything Windows, right? But that doesn't really work because Windows is crap, and you have console gamers who just want to plug in and play. They don't want to pay $1,000, $1,200, $1,400 for that, and they don't care about having the access to the PC stuff, right? The Steam thing isn't going to sell for shit, and that thing is going to be, probably $700 to $1,000. Imagine a next-gen version of that the Xbox is going to be, that's probably going to be even way more expensive. But if nobody's going to buy a Steam machine for, $700, $800, whatever, then why would they buy this next Xbox that's going to be $1,000, $1,200, $1,400, whatever the case may be? It doesn't make much sense that, that would be the case. So, when you look at it from that kind of perspective, it kind of shows you where you're at. I know there's this group of fans or whatever that really thinks that Xbox is really onto something. I don't see that personally. I look at it as Microsoft offloading fans to PC, and then they can stop hardware because those that have already went with them to the next quote-unquote Xbox are already on a PC. And I also don't think, what people don't realize with this whole thing that's going on, everybody's talking about Play Anywhere like it's a big deal, which has already been around for a decade, by the way. But there is not going to be any Play Anywhere next generation. Their next quote-unquote console is just going to be a Windows PC, and there's probably not going to be a quote-unquote console version of the game. So all this dual ownership and you get a PC version of it, no, that's not going to be a thing anymore. It's just going to be you get the one version, right? And then it'll play on PCs because their next offering is a PC. So, it is kind of a strange situation we find ourselves in terms of, is Microsoft going to be out there, kind of for the fans or whatever, like Phil Spencer. I feel like people like Phil Spencer. It's a weird situation because it's easy to go and say, hey, well, this guy really, really, kind of said, some things, or maybe saved the Xbox at a point, but has he really done that? Just honestly, it just feels like they didn't really, think that through. Maybe they were going to dump Xbox. Would Xbox have been better spun off? I don't know if they would have completely closed Xbox, but maybe it would have been spun off and kind of done its own thing. I think that's a possibility. I kind of wish that would be the case now, where you have, where Xbox could stand on its own. I don't know, would they be able to have exclusives again? I think if they probably got rid of, some of the stuff they wouldn't have those huge margins and things. I think that maybe we would see a situation where they could possibly do that, and it would really count on them selling a lot of hardware in order to sell more software, in order to also sell more subscriptions, because that's the way this thing works. I know people go, oh well, if you're counting Xbox console sales, that's an old school metric, but it's like, you guys do realize that's not a gotcha, right? Because Sony and Nintendo both sell consoles and get a lot of money through subscriptions and software sales. Microsoft doesn't sell a lot of consoles, and therefore doesn't, but all the subscriptions and stuff that they do have, like the majority of them come from console owners. So the people that are subscribed to Game Pass and stuff are majority console owners. That came out at the FTC trial. Of course, that's going to continue to be the case. So if you had 80 million Xboxes sold right now, you could have 50, 60 million people subscribe to Game Pass, right? Because I can tell you right now, people aren't going to subscribe to Game Pass on a phone or whatever. Like, who's going to pay $400 a year for the ability to stream games, like console games, on a phone or a 5-6 inch screen or whatever, or any size screen, really, like a TV? Like, that's why it's not really a big deal. And I've always kind of mentioned that, like, Phil Spencer's ideas never really amounted to much, in my opinion, because we never got to see what an Xbox looked like with great exclusives for 4 or 5 years in a row, building up that trust, building up what people have been asking for. So, it's really unfortunate that happens the way that it did. I know people go, oh, well, they chirp, the lines that Phil says, we can't out console this, we can't do this, we can't do that, right? So we've heard that numerous times before, and, it's unfortunate that people just would rather regurgitate what Phil Spencer's saying, as opposed to coming up with something new, or coming up with something that could actually change the way that we're gaming. It's such a weird situation that we find ourselves in, and for me anyway, it doesn't make a lot of sense, because like Phil has already kind of mucked up so bad that I don't really think that we're going to see anything that could change like how we're doing things, in general. Like, I don't see how Microsoft would ever change back to kind of to how to do anything in general, where they're going to be able to kind of win back fans or anything like that. So again, we'll see. Maybe they bust something out, maybe they backtrack a little bit, but I don't understand, like, unless they were to put somebody like Mike Ibarra in charge of Xbox, I'm not sure what good it would do, to be quite honest with you. We live in a kind of weird world where I think people realistically want kind of are looking for one thing over the other, or they're looking for something to kind of push, lead the charge, or whatever the case may be. And is that going to be something that we ever see? Listen, I don't know. I would love for it to be that way, but Microsoft seems really intent on like further eroding and killing their brand, and I'm not sure if that's ever going to be able to be a thing. So we'll see how it goes. I would love to hear everybody's thought process on this stuff, and if it's something that you guys agree with or not, just in general, because I think like Microsoft has kind of failed. They failed a lot of people. I mean, I feel like they failed me as a fan, whatever the case may be, but maybe you guys might feel different overall. I don't know, but seeing Phil go, I think that it would be it could be a good thing, depending on if they wanted to like totally restructure gaming, maybe sell off some assets, sell off Bethesda, ZeniMax, sell off Activision, and just run Xbox as Xbox and keep some exclusives, and just keep the main people that they have, and focus again on your content. And I think they could be successful doing that, but it would take like this total top-down teardown, in my opinion. And I honestly am not sure that they would ever do that, or ever have the kind of balls to do that, you know what I mean? And they would have to stay, like the corporate side would have to stay out of everything, like you couldn't allow the corporate side to kind of be involved at all, you know, which I don't think that would ever happen. So with that being said, let me know how you guys feel about it. Thank you so much for watching. Have a fantastic day. Rack 'em up. Crep Gamer out.